Let's turn to threats to our farming, because a Dalhousie professor, known for defending big grocers amidst record food inflation and who believes the woke movement is influencing our food policies, well, he describes Bill C-293 as a major, major threat. He writes that it has the potential to significantly expand governmental powers in response to future pandemics and warns that it could lead to government mandating the consumption of vegetable proteins. These are dangerous times, if you believe the dark corners of the internet or meat lobbyists. Of course, I know it doesn't do these things because I wrote the damn bill. It doesn't grant any new governmental authorities at all. And don't worry, Aunt Kim, it won't force anyone to eat vegetables. Instead, the bill requires the government to develop a plan to prepare for and to take steps to reduce the risk of a future pandemic, to table that plan in Parliament for accountability, and to update it every few years so the issue doesn't fall by the wayside as it did after SARS. The scary vegan section, well, that requires the feds to consult with provinces and ensure there are measures in place to manage and reduce pandemic risk, including in industrial animal agriculture. The World Bank calls the overuse of antibiotics a public health threat and pegs AMR deaths at hundreds of thousands per year already. Now, Canada's taking action, and that work should be updated as needed. We also know that a high density of genetically similar animals increases infectious disease risk. We know that. That's just the evidence. Avian and swine flus aren't new, and expert reports have laid this out clearly and then some. So what does the bill do? It calls for regulating commercial activities to reduce pandemic risk, including industrial animal agriculture. Now, I had biosecurity measures in mind, which shouldn't be controversial. Global travel is a key pandemic risk too, and no one is talking about ending either animal agriculture or travel. That would be ridiculous. It's about managing and reducing risks. Now, here's where it gets real scary. The bill suggests we should promote commercial activities that help to reduce pandemic risk, like alternative proteins. This, as I've come to learn from experts like far-right MP Cheryl Gallant, is apparently a communist code word for eating bugs.
Alternative protein is just a far-left dog whistle that means crickets. What is it with the far left and their desire to have us all eat bugs?
Of course, there are plant-based alternatives already common, which matter a lot to Canada's pulse industry. And there's cellular agriculture too, where we see products in Singapore and better industry support in the US and other countries. No one is going to force your kids to eat bugs.
We should not be expecting our kids to eat bugs.
Okay. We either meet growing global demand for protein in an unsustainable way at great risk to public health, or through a combination of biosecure meat alongside an expansion of alternative proteins. More choices, no mandates. Lastly, as we saw with mink farming in the pandemic, some activities have little economic value and come with disproportionate infectious disease risks. That's why BC and many other jurisdictions around the world banned the practice. So the bill calls for phasing out those activities that unreasonably, disproportionately contribute to pandemic risk, including activities with high-risk species. And that's it. That is the apparent end of animal agriculture as we know it, and here I thought I'd made it pretty clear in the House that I was open to reasonable amendments.
There are amendments, I have no doubt, that ought to be made to add things, to remove things, to adjust language. I'm certainly open to amending the legislation based on the details.
I said I was open to that amendment too.
Again, I don't propose that it's perfect, and I would expect amendments are going to be forthcoming. And I want to say amendments should be forthcoming. Make sure that we, at all times, focus on what is best on the science when it comes to prevention and preparedness.
The only reason we didn't see amendments in the House as I called for is because the Conservatives filibustered the thing. I am still open to reasonable changes, of course, and to working across the aisle. I am deeply worried that any sense of reasonable disagreement is disappearing. Not just to partisan gamesmanship, that's not new, but to an online ecosystem that is driven by conspiracies and grifters, further amplified and torqued by foreign interference, all leading politicians by the nose.